Did you know that nearly 70% of people say they judge a city within the first 10 minutes of arriving, not by the buildings, not by the weather, but by how people treat them? Now, here's the shocking part. Some cities in California are constantly labeled online as the places where locals seem cold, impatient, or even outright rude. But is it really the people? Or is something deeper going on? Because psychology research suggests something surprising. When cities become fast, crowded, and stressful, people don't necessarily become bad. They become mentally overloaded, and that overload can change how kindness is expressed. So today, we are stepping into a controversial list of 10 California cities often called the rudest in America. But don't rush to judge yet, because by the end of this video, you might realize the truth is not about rudeness at all. It's about survival in a modern city life. Number 1. Bakersfield. When people talk about Bakersfield, one word comes up again and again: direct. But online, that directness often gets labeled as rudeness. So what's really going on here? Bakersfield is a growing city in California's Central Valley, known for its strong work culture, agriculture, and fast-moving daily life. According to urban behavior studies, cities built around high work intensity and practical industries often develop communication styles that are short, efficient, and no-nonsense. Now, imagine walking into a store or asking for directions. In some places, you might get a smile, small talk, and a long conversation. But in Bakersfield, you're more likely to get a quick answer, minimal eye contact, and straight-to-the-point responses. And here's the interesting part. Psychology research shows that this doesn't necessarily mean people are unfriendly. It often means they are operating in a time-efficient mindset, where energy is focused on tasks rather than extended social interaction. But for visitors from slower-paced environments, this can feel surprising, even uncomfortable. That gap in expectation is exactly where the rude city label begins to form. However, locals often describe it differently. In their eyes, it's not rudeness. It's honesty, efficiency, and real-world practicality. People get things done without unnecessary layers of social formality. Another important factor is urban stress adaptation. In busy working cities, people unconsciously conserve emotional energy. That means fewer smiles to strangers, fewer long conversations, and a more direct communication. So the question is Bakersfield actually rude, or just a place where people value time and clarity over small talk? Because once you understand the rhythm of the city, what first feels harsh might actually become one of its most honest and authentic traits. Number 2. Barstow. At first glance, Barstow might feel unusual compared to other California cities. It's not a flashy destination or a fast-growing metro hub. Instead, it's a key travel stop city where thousands of people pass through every day on long road trips across the state. And here's where things get interesting. Because in places like Barstow, human interaction follows a very different pattern. Research in environmental psychology shows that in high-transit locations, places where people are constantly coming and going, locals tend to develop a more efficient and reserved communication style. Why? Because interactions are often brief, repeated, and transactional. So, when visitors arrive expecting warmth, long conversations, or friendly small talk, they may instead experience something different: short answers, a minimal engagement, and a get-to-the-point attitude. But that's where the misunderstanding begins. What feels like rudeness is often just a social adaptation to constant movement. Imagine talking to strangers all day who are only stopping for gas, food, or directions. Over time, people naturally conserve emotional energy. They focus on function over familiarity. Another factor is the pace of life. Barstow operates in a rhythm shaped by highways, logistics, and travel flow. In such environments, time becomes valuable and conversations become quick and purposeful. However, locals often don't see themselves as rude at all. In fact, many would describe their behavior as practical, calm, and efficient, a way of keeping daily life smooth in a city that never stops receiving travelers. So the real question is not whether Barstow people are rude. It's whether we are misreading silence and efficiency as coldness, simply because we expect every place to behave like a friendly neighborhood. Because once you understand Barstow's role as a transit city, even its quietness starts to make perfect sense. Number 3. Carmel-by-the-Sea. Carmel-by-the-Sea is often described as one of the most beautiful coastal towns in California, with storybook cottages, art galleries, and peaceful streets that look straight out of a painting. But strangely, some visitors leave with a very different impression. They call it cold or even rude. So what's really happening here? Psychology research on high-end tourist destinations shows that in places where privacy and lifestyle preservation are highly valued, locals often develop strong boundary-setting behavior. This means they are polite, but not overly engaging with strangers. Now, imagine walking into a quiet gallery or cafe expecting friendly small talk. Instead, you get soft-spoken service, minimal conversation, and a strong sense that people are keeping to themselves. For some visitors, this feels distant, but in reality, it's intentional. Carmel-by-the-Sea has a long history of valuing artistic culture, calm living, and personal space. Many residents choose this town specifically for its quietness, not its social buzz. That changes the entire communication style of the community. Another important factor is tourist saturation. Studies show that in heavily visited scenic towns, locals often experience social fatigue, where repeated interactions with strangers reduce emotional expressiveness over time. It's not dislike, it's mental conservation. But here's the twist. Locals often believe they are being respectful. In their culture, respecting someone also means not interrupting their space or peace. So what visitors interpret as coldness is often just a different definition of friendliness. Because in Carmel-by-the-Sea, kindness doesn't always look like conversation. Sometimes it looks like silence, space, and calm presence. And once you understand that, the rude label starts to disappear. Number 4. Chico. At first, Chico looks like the perfect friendly college town. Trees, students, cafes, and a relaxed California vibe. But strangely, many outsiders report feeling something unexpected here, like they are being ignored, excluded, or treated coldly. So, what's really going on? Social psychology gives us a powerful clue. Chico is a strong, college-centered community, and in such environments, people naturally form tight social groups. Researchers call this the in-group effect, where individuals feel more comfortable and open with familiar faces, while remaining more reserved around outsiders. Now picture this in real life. Students walk in groups, friends stick together, and conversations are already flowing within established circles. If you're not part of that circle, it can feel like you're standing just outside a moving world. But here's the important part. It's not personal. In reality, most people in Chico aren't trying to be rude. They are simply operating within their social comfort zones, which are shaped by campus life, routines, and friendships that have been built over time. Another factor is distraction. College towns are often filled with people juggling classes, exams, part-time jobs, and social plans. This creates a mindset where attention is constantly divided, making strangers feel less noticeable, not less important, just less visible in the moment. From the outside, that lack of attention can feel like indifference. But psychology suggests it's more about cognitive load and social focus, not rejection. And interestingly, once you become part of the local rhythm, attend events, visit the same spots, or connect with student spaces, the experience changes completely. The same people who once felt distant suddenly appear warm and engaging. So the real question is Chico rude? Or is it simply a place where belonging determines behavior more than location does? Because in many college towns like this, friendliness isn't missing. It's just group-based rather than universal. Number 5. Clearlake. Now let's talk about Clearlake, a place that often surprises visitors with how different the social energy feels compared to bigger California cities. At first, you might expect calm lake views and friendly local interactions, and you do get that. But some visitors also describe moments that feel distant, brief, or emotionally closed off. So why does this happen? Research in environmental and social psychology shows that smaller communities facing long-term economic and environmental pressures often develop a unique communication style. People are not necessarily unfriendly, but they can become emotionally reserved as a way to manage daily stress. In Clearlake, this can show up in simple, everyday moments. A quick store interaction, a short response without extra conversation, or a neutral expression that feels colder than expected. For visitors, this can easily be misinterpreted as rudeness. But here's the deeper truth. It's often about mental bandwidth. When communities experience ongoing stress factors, such as financial instability, environmental challenges, or limited resources, people tend to conserve emotional energy. That means less small talk, fewer smiles to strangers, and more focus on immediate needs. It doesn't mean people don't care. It means their communication becomes functional rather than expressive. Interestingly, locals often don't see themselves as rude at all. From their perspective, they are simply being realistic, focused, and direct, saving energy for what matters most in their daily lives. And there's another layer too. Familiarity matters. In many small towns, warmth is often reserved for people who are known, trusted, and part of the community circle. Outsiders may not instantly receive that same level of openness, not because they are unwelcome, but because trust is built slowly. So when people label Clearlake as rude, they may actually be witnessing something very different, a community adapting to its environment in the most practical human way possible. And once you understand that, the silence starts to feel less like rejection and more like reality. Now, tell us in the comments, have you ever visited a place that felt rude at first but changed your mind later? We read every story, and yours might even be featured next. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, subscribe with just one click. And because we put real effort into bringing you content that actually makes you think differently about the world. Number 6. Clovis. At first, Clovis looks like the definition of a peaceful California suburb. Clean streets, family neighborhoods, and a calm atmosphere that feels welcoming. But some visitors are surprised when they experience interactions that feel a little reserved, distant, or surprisingly formal. So, what's really happening here? Clovis is a city that has experienced rapid population growth over the years. And according to urban sociology research, when a place grows quickly, its social identity often goes through a transition phase. People are still adjusting to new neighbors, new cultures, and new routines, all at the same time. This can create something subtle, but powerful. Social caution. Instead of instantly warm interactions, people may appear more careful, more observant, and slightly less open with strangers. That's not because they are unfriendly, but because the community structure is still evolving. Now imagine daily life here. New housing developments, increasing traffic, new businesses opening every month. In this kind of environment, people often prioritize routine stability over social expansion. That means conversations are shorter, greetings are polite but limited, and emotional energy is saved for close relationships. Psychology studies also show that in rapidly changing communities, individuals unconsciously develop a wait-and-see attitude toward unfamiliar people. This can make interactions feel less expressive, especially to visitors expecting immediate warmth. But here's the interesting truth. Clovis is not lacking friendliness. It is experiencing social recalibration. Locals often describe themselves as polite, respectful, and community-focused. The warmth is there, but it tends to show up more strongly after repeated interactions rather than instantly. So, when someone labels Clovis as rude, it may actually be a misunderstanding of a city in transition, where people are still figuring out how to balance a small-town comfort with big city growth pressure. And once that balance stabilizes, the social energy often becomes much more open and familiar over time. Number 7. Compton. When people hear the name Compton, they often come in with expectations shaped by movies, media, and online stereotypes. But what many visitors discover is something far more complex and often misunderstood. Some describe interactions here as guarded, firm, or less openly warm. But is that really rudeness? Or is it something deeper? Social psychology gives us an important explanation. In communities that have historically faced strong external judgment and misrepresentation, people often develop what researchers call protective social behavior. This means they become more careful about how they interact with strangers, especially outsiders. Now, imagine growing up in a place where your community is constantly judged before it is understood. Over time, communication naturally shifts. People become more direct, and yet more cautious and more selective with emotional openness, not because they lack kindness, but because they value self-respect and emotional safety. In everyday life, this can look like short responses, serious expressions, or limited small talk with unfamiliar people. For some visitors, this might feel intimidating or even unfriendly, but in reality, it often reflects strength, awareness, and boundary setting. Another key factor is cultural identity. Compton is a city with a strong sense of pride, resilience, and community loyalty. In such environments, respect is not always shown through constant friendliness. It is often shown through authenticity and presence. Psychological studies also show that media influence can heavily shape expectations. When people arrive already expecting a cold atmosphere, they are more likely to interpret neutral behavior as negative, even when no negativity exists. But once real connection is built, through time, trust, and familiarity, the perception often changes completely. Warmth, humor, and deep community bonds become very visible. So the real question is Compton actually rude? Or is it simply a place where strength is mistaken for distance? Because sometimes, what looks like silence is actually confidence in disguise. Number 8. Fresno. At first, Fresno might seem like a typical California city with a busy but balanced lifestyle. But many visitors describe something unexpected during everyday interactions. They feel that people are short, rushed, or emotionally distant. So, what's really happening here? Fresno is one of the largest cities in California's Central Valley, and it plays a major role in agriculture, trade, and industry. According to urban behavior research, cities with strong working economies often develop a communication style that is efficient, task-focused, and time-sensitive. Now imagine a daily routine shaped by work schedules, traffic, heat, and constant movement. In such environments, people naturally prioritize speed over small talk. That means conversations are often direct, polite, but very brief. For a visitor expecting long greetings or friendly chatter, this can feel surprisingly cold. But psychology studies suggest something important here. When people are under time pressure, the brain subconsciously reduces non-essential social interaction to conserve energy and stay productive. This is not rudeness. It's adaptation. Another factor is environmental stress. Fresno's climate and fast-paced economy contribute to a lifestyle where efficiency becomes a survival strategy in daily routines. Even simple tasks like shopping or asking for directions are often handled quickly, without extra conversation. But locals don't necessarily see this as unfriendly. From their perspective, being clear and direct is actually a form of respect for other people's time. And here's the key insight. Warmth in Fresno is not absent. It's just not always expressed through long conversations or visible emotional displays. It often shows up in helpfulness, honesty, and straightforward communication instead. So, when outsiders label Fresno as rude, they may actually be misreading a city that simply runs on a different rhythm, one where time matters just as much as words. And once you understand that rhythm, what once felt cold starts to feel efficient, grounded, and real. Number 9. Healdsburg. At first glance, Healdsburg feels like a dream. Vineyards, boutique hotels, fine dining, and a peaceful small-town charm that attracts visitors from all over the world. But surprisingly, some people leave with an unexpected impression. They felt the city was polite, but emotionally distant. So, what's really going on here? Healdsburg is part of California's well-known wine country. And according to tourism behavior studies, high-end destinations often develop a unique social pattern known as professional warmth. This means interactions are polite, respectful, and well-mannered, but also slightly reserved and structured. Now imagine walking into a vineyard tasting room or a boutique cafe. You are greeted professionally, served efficiently, and treated with care, but without too much personal conversation. For some visitors, this feels calm and elegant. For others, it can feel like emotional distance or coldness. But psychology research explains this clearly. In tourism-heavy luxury environments, staff and even locals often experience emotional labor fatigue. This means they constantly manage social interactions throughout the day, which naturally reduces expressive behavior over time. It's not lack of friendliness, it's managed interaction. Another key factor is lifestyle. Healdsburg is a place where many people choose to live specifically for its quiet, refined atmosphere. That attracts individuals who value privacy, calmness, and personal space. So, naturally, the social energy leans toward subtlety rather than constant engagement. Visitors sometimes mistake this subtlety for rudeness, especially if they come from more expressive or fast-paced environments. But in reality, the communication style here is intentional. It reflects a desire to maintain balance between hospitality and personal boundaries. And here's the deeper insight. In places like Healdsburg, kindness is often expressed through quality of service, attention to detail, and calm presence rather than constant verbal interaction. So, is Healdsburg rude? Or is it simply a place where people have learned to define warmth in a quieter, more controlled way? Because sometimes silence isn't distance, it's refined comfort. Number 10. Hemet. At first, Hemet looks like a quiet, relaxed Southern California city with a slower pace of life. But many visitors report something unexpected during their interactions. They sometimes feel responses are short, impatient, or less emotionally warm than expected. So, what's really happening here? According to social psychology research, communities with a large retiree population and fluctuating economic conditions often develop a communication style that is direct and efficiency-based, especially in busy public spaces like stores, clinics, and service centers. Now imagine everyday life. People managing health appointments, errands, and limited time in the day. In such environments, conversations naturally become functional rather than social. That means fewer greetings, less small talk, and more focus on completing tasks quickly. For visitors, this can feel like coldness or even rudeness, but in reality, it is often a reflection of daily life pressures and personal energy management. Another important factor is expectation mismatch. When people arrive in a calm-looking city, they often expect relaxed and friendly interactions everywhere. But psychology shows that behavior is shaped more by context than appearance. Even in peaceful settings, stress can still influence how people communicate. Locals, however, may not perceive themselves as rude at all. From their perspective, being direct is simply a way to be clear, respectful, and time-conscious. It avoids confusion and keeps daily routines moving smoothly. There is also a subtle emotional layer here. In many smaller communities, warmth is often reserved for familiar faces, neighbors, friends, and long-term connections, rather than strangers. This can make the first-time interactions feel more neutral. So when people label Hemet as rude, it may actually reflect something much more human, a community where energy is carefully managed, not freely expressed at every moment. And once you understand that, Even the most distant interaction starts to look less like rejection and more like reality shaped by everyday life. Because sometimes what feels cold on the surface is just people trying to get through their day the best way they can. After exploring all 10 cities, Bakersfield, Barstow, Carmel-by-the-Sea, Chico, Clearlake, Clovis, Compton, Fresno, Healdsburg, and Hemet, one thing becomes very clear. What people often label as rudeness is rarely about bad behavior. Instead, it's about context, pressure, and perception. Across every city, we saw the same hidden patterns supported by social and environmental psychology. In busy working cities, people become more direct and time-focused. In tourist-heavy areas, emotional energy gets reduced due to constant social interaction. In tight-knit communities, outsiders may feel excluded because of strong in-group bonding. In rapidly growing cities, social behavior is still adjusting to new environments and people. And in stressful or transitional areas, e-communication often becomes more functional than expressive. So, what does this really mean? It means that rudeness is often just a misinterpretation of survival behavior in modern life. People are not always trying to be cold. They are often just managing their time, energy, stress, and surroundings in the most practical way possible. And here's the deeper truth. Every city has its own rhythm. Some move fast, some move slow. Some are expressive, others are reserved. But none of that automatically defines kindness. Because kindness doesn't always look like smiles or long conversations. Sometimes it looks like efficiency, silence, boundaries, or simple honesty. So, the next time you travel and feel like a place is rude, pause for a second and ask yourself, is this really rudeness, or just a different way of living? Because once you start seeing cities through this lens, you don't just understand places better, you understand people better too. And that might be the most important travel lesson of all.